Hi guys, Rich from Art of Smart. Welcome back to another rack walkthrough video. However, you're actually getting two for the price of one in this video because this pair of racks are going to be going down to our K-TEC project down in Devon. So that's K-TEC's an Art of Smart partner, and this is a project we're doing together down in Devon. Now, the rest of the racks behind me here, because the rack build lab is absolute chaos at the minute, are going down to different projects in different parts of the country with different partners. They have all been videoed for rack walkthrough videos as well. So whether they go out before or after this one, keep your eye on the channel, click the like button and subscribe, and click that bell to turn on notifications, and you'll see when we drop more videos. Anyway, let me get these racks moved out of the way and take you through the first one first. So the general setup of these two racks is they've been built separately. They will go to site, they will get wheeled, and they will get bolted together to then become one bigger rack. And the reason we're going for two 27Us instead of one 36 or 47U is so it's easy to get these racks down the stairs and into the basement where they'll be located. And again, they'll get bolted together and put in, and all these links will then go between the racks and get them all in place. So this rack I've got here is our control and audio rack. So it has our Control 4 processor in and all our amps and audio connections and the cinema amp. And the one behind me there, that has got in the power distribution, the network, the UPS, and the video distribution. And again, these links will then feed back through the racks to pass services across that need to come between the two racks. So when these get bolted together, obviously the other way around, we've got HDMI leads and network connectors already made off and tested, even the power cables that are going to run through the UPS. And if you've been watching our other rack walkthroughs, you'll see the DJ switches that we've been using with the toggles. We've actually got one of those going to go into there. So all the IECs are made off behind that, ready to go in. They're just currently on back order, same as a lot of stuff. Even though we ordered it months in advance, it's still a product we are waiting for. So let's go through the rest of the kit and show you what we've got going on in this one. So this actually has an EF5 controller. You'll have seen some of our videos recently will have been showing the new Core 5 controller. However, this rack and this equipment has actually been sat in our warehouse for almost a year. Yes, that's right, almost a year. And the reason it's been sat in our warehouse for so long is because the client's actually building this house. It's actually one of his holiday homes. He's a very busy guy, very businessman, and it's not top, the project is not top on his priority list. So builders have been off site, back on site, the electrician's been on site, off site. So yeah, the stock's been sat in our warehouse for a year. I said to Kelvin at K-TEC, bro, you are gonna have to get here, come build these racks, because you're taking up 6 pallet bays in my warehouse and we need some space. So build the racks, probably gonna see you for another couple of months before they go on to site, probably about March. But anyway, so we've got our EF5 controller. That's gonna be providing the audio streams to the rack. That's why we decided to put the EF5 in this rack, as opposed to in what is usually our network and control rack, because we need these audio streams for the rest of the kit. Rest of the kit being this Triad audio matrix switch. So this is a 16x16 Triad audio matrix switch, AMS16, which is then powering the 4 amps. So the 4 amps of audio. Now, question we get quite often, or people notice on our channels, because they do the 8-zone amps. Why do you use separate 4-zone amps? And that's because the 8-zone amps, when more than 4 zones go to full power or above half power, it drops the power output down. So we use those amps so that it provides full power to all 4 zones. And that's what we've got going in there. So we've got 12 zones of audio in this property. Then coming down, we've actually got a couple more amps here. These amps are slightly different. These are 700 watt rack amps. So these are made by Triad. And this is going to be powering the subs on this project. So we've got 2 of those in the cinema room. Coming down then, we've got the Anthem. This is the Anthem MRX 1140. So it's 40 series, and the 11 stands for 11 channels of audio. And that's because this amp is going to be powering a cinema room that is set up in a 7.2.4 configuration. So what 7.2.4 is you have your LCR, which in this instance are going to be in wall and behind the screen. You're then going to have your surrounds, and then we're going to have our rears behind us, as well as 4 Atmos channels in the ceiling. So it's going to be a really good cinema room. 7.1.4 in a Triad Silver, which is exactly the same as we've got on demo down at AOS HQ. Last but not least, in this rack, we have a rack drawer. Now that is where the drawings and documentation are going to live for this rack, as well as the remotes for some of the other devices in the video distribution rack. Before we go on to the next rack, let's have a look at the back of this one. And again, same as all the racks. Isn't that nice? So up at the top here, we've got our cables. As I mentioned before, those IECs are going to another distribution unit. We then got some pinks for our contacts wired out from this rack. Now there is actually 3 IO expanders in fact going in the network and termination box, and that is because this client wanted motion sensors absolutely everywhere. So we've not wired the additional relays out of that controller, and the reason we've not is because we've got 24 relays available to us on the processor that is elsewhere. Coming down then, we have the audio streams, as I mentioned, coming into the audio matrix switch, there into the inputs there. So we've got all our outputs coming out of here, coming down to the amps, and then a separate stream of audio that's going to go into the Anthem. So all these cables here are speaker wires, and you might think, Rich, I'm sure we only had 3 amps when we was looking at the front of this rack, and you are right. You can see here that is actually wired for 4 amps. So the reason we've wired it for 4 amps is because on this project, it's been wired for 4 more zones of audio that may or may not get added in a second phase. So to make our lives easier later down the line, when it's in the rack build lab, we will dress those cables in ready. They will then come out the Anacondas onto the other end, into the termination box, and they will sit ready. If the client ever decides to add that amp, we then just put the amp in place without having to dress cables, without having to try rework a rack, because anybody that tells you they can add into a rack later down the line, on site, in time efficiencies, and make it look like the rest of the rack is quite frankly a liar. The racks never look as good as they do the day that they leave AOS HQ, when people are pulling cables, connectors, changing devices. So we've preempted that, we've wired for that device, and that is in situ, ready to go. So then finally, coming down to the bottom, the 2 sub amps, then have our digi outs, LFE channels connected into the amp here, and then all our speaker connectors, which are actually connected on the Planet Waves connectors. So we use the Planet Waves for the audio, but also use those for the speaker terminations. So yeah, so that is the back of that rack, looking beautiful. Now if I just move this rack out of the way, you can see on the back of here, now not just really weak, but you'll be surprised at how heavy all these speaker cables might actually be. You can see that we've got all these connectors that are ready to go into the termination box, all labelled up, ready to plug into our zones of audio. This is all tested before it leaves here, and that means that we can build the rack, test the rack, all the field termination infrastructure is tested, so it gets to site, all plugs together, and it means rather than us spending weeks in your house getting this built and programmed and tested, commissioned, all the rest of it, we do it on site and we can commission a system of this size in around 4 to 5 days. So as you can see on this rack, because there's not as much on there, the Anacondas for this are actually sat on the top, waiting to go out and be dressed in. But again, let's run through the rack. Another 27U Penelcom rack. And at the top of this one there, we've got the Araknis network switch. So 24-port network switch with 1 single data powering these 2 racks as an uplink, which will go into the main network and termination racks. Coming down then, the AOS rack strip, as always, which will have the site ID, asset ID, and our support contact details. We then have an ATEN PDU. Now the ATEN PDU will actually control both racks because we have these 2 tails here, which are going to be going out to our EA5 and our audio matrix switch, and then the rest of the amps are all powered on their own connection. We then have the PulseEight video matrix. So this is a 10x10 video matrix switch, which is going to be powering 10 zones of video distribution within the house, including the 2 feeds we've got here, waiting to go into the AVR for both the input into it and then the output that is going to go to the screen. The rest of the devices in here, we then have the Hikvision NVR. Again, we've not got loads of yellow cables coming out of the rack because we're using the termination network switch method, which again has reduced the amount of rainbow spaghetti in the racks, but it's also reduced the size of our Anacondas. Now, usually they're not as big and heavy as that one is on there. However, because there is so many zones of audio in this house, plus the cinema, plus the length of the Anacondas, because how we want to be able to pull the rack out for maintenance, that means it is a lot longer than usual. Then we've actually got on here 4 source shelves. So 4 source shelves, 10x10 video matrix. So we'll have 4 source shelves on this one. So these are all prepped and primed and have the HDMI cables, which are of course all labeled, and the data cables ready for the sources that are ready for those. All those are sat in on the shelves, ready to go. And then coming down here, last but not least, probably one of the main components, we've got the UPS battery backup. This UPS that I've got in this rack is a 1500 VA UPS, which is going to provide power failure to this system for around an hour. Now, if you think this UPS is big compared to ones that we usually use, which are in our small racks, 450 VA, In a slightly bigger racks, we use a 750 VA, and then in our usually bigger racks, we use 1000 VA, which will give those rack sizes about half an hour run time. So now that I've had a look through the front of this rack, let's have a look through the back of it. So yeah, in the back of this rack, what we've got going on is we have the network switch up the top of here, just probably slightly out of your view. Lacing bars as always on the components, and then we've got the IPPDU with its temperature sensor there. We then got our Cat6 cables for all the video distribution. So we've actually got 8 zones wired out of here, with 2 more tails on here for zones 9 and 10, should they get added in later on. And then we've got the HDMI outputs, which are coming down here onto all the shelves for all of these devices, along with the network cables. Then as always on our source shelves, we've got 2 4-gang sockets, so that we can plug the devices straight in on there. And then last but not least, down at the bottom there, you can tell by the angled C15 IEC connectors, that she's a big boy, plus all the output ports on there, but we have the 1500 VA UPS on the bottom of there. So yeah, 2 really good racks, built by an Outersmart partner, but in our rack build lab to AOS standards. So as always when we do these racks, we've got full documentation packed from here. These are just the layout pages that I'm showing you. But the rest of the documents are all here for those racks, which is going to make any future servicing, any remote monitoring and maintenance much easier for all parties involved. Anyway, that's me taking you through the K-TEC racks. Hope you've enjoyed the video. Again, like and subscribe, click the bell for notifications, get in the comments if you have any questions, and I will see you on the next video.